Whoa. It's looking like there might be a massive upset in the Saskatchewan election tonight, where it's very possible that Premier Scott Moe may lose and the Saskatchewan NDP may win. We're seeing a lot of change elections in the country recently, a lot of anti-incumbency. People are fed up and people are voting against the party and people in power. We saw that in New Brunswick. We saw that in British Columbia, even though it now looks like Dave Eby and the NDP may squeak out a majority. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but there's been some developments. They're squeaking to 47 seats right now, a razor-thin majority, but that's still down a lot from where he was. So we are seeing anti-incumbency across the country, which is not good for Trudeau, regardless of what the hardcore Trudeau fans and the Liberal fans are telling you. And we're going to deep dive into some of the issues and comparisons between the provinces a little bit. And before we begin, guys, please like, share, comment, subscribe. It really helps me, and it helps us have a wider conversation. So again, anti-incumbency is the name of the game right now, where people are fed up and they're voting against the party and the people in power. We saw that in the last two provincial elections, and we'll probably see a lot of that tonight. I think it's going to be a lot closer in Saskatchewan than many people thought it would be. Let's go quickly to New Brunswick for a little overview of that. And if you want more details, you can go and look on my video on New Brunswick I made just a few days ago. So New Brunswick overwhelmingly voted out Premier Blaine Higgs and the Progressive Conservatives, and they elected Susan Holt and the New Brunswick Liberals. The New Brunswick Liberals are associated with the federal Liberals, but the provincial Liberals of New Brunswick made a very deliberate effort not to invoke or mention Trudeau as much as possible because he is so deeply unpopular. So the Susan Holt and the New Brunswick Liberals won a staggering 48% of the vote and 31 of the 49 seats in New Brunswick, and the Conservatives only won 35% of the vote and 16 seats, which is way down from where they were. I believe they were at 25 or 28 seats in the last election. They're down to 16 now, including Higgs. He lost his seat, so you can't get more of a rejection than that. So again, they avoided mentioning Trudeau. And there was a series of big mistakes that Premier Higgs made that I want to mention really quickly. And again, if you want to go deeper into it, my other video will enlighten you on the topic. But New Brunswick is Canada's officially only bilingual province, and Premier Higgs made several antagonistic moves towards the province's Francophone community over the years, and that was not a wise thing to do. There were other things that in a close election were very unwise to do, but wow, it just goes to show you that when people are fed up, they will vote for change and they will vote hugely. And I still think that's what's going to happen with Trudeau when the next federal election happens. So now we're going to dive into BC. So it's 9 days after the BC election, and the big update today is that the BC NDP have pulled ahead, and it seems like they're now going to have a 47-seat majority. 47 seats is the majority, and possibly 48 seats if they can flip Kelowna Centre. So days and days of counting, and the mail-in and absentee ballots have overwhelmingly went in favor of the NDP. The NDP lead in Malahat, you remember that was a riding where they were leading by, 20 or something votes. They have widened that to, I believe, over 100 now, where the Conservatives would have possibly been able to upset this thing. But Malahat is well safe for the NDP. And then in the other ridings like Surrey, Guildford, they have flipped that. The NDP flipped that in their favor today. At first there was, it got down to a 13 vote lead, then a 9 vote lead, and then they flipped it. And now I think they're leading by double digits. So the NDP are cruising towards a majority in British Columbia. Again, I still think there was a lot of historic gains made there. Go watch my other video on the BC election to see why a lot of that is a win. I believe it might be titled BC election, the BC Conservatives only behind by 1 seat. Of course, that's not accurate anymore, but it goes over some of the reasons for this, the fact that we're having change elections, some of the environmental factors, the fact that there's the left-wing capital of Canada in British Columbia, and the fact that the Conservative Party that didn't even exist, and this is the first time that a named Conservative Party has done this well in British Columbia in decades. This is huge gain. This is huge that they came this close to forming a minority or majority government, and next time they probably will. But if trends continue, and they probably will continue to deteriorate quality of life, etc. So after days of counting, they flipped Surrey, Guildford, and now the NDP has a razor-thin 47-seat majority, and it could extend to 48 seats if they flip Kelowna Centre. Mail-in and absentee ballots overwhelmingly going in the NDP's favor. And you know what? There are At first, Elections BC said there were 49,000 outstanding votes, then 65, then 66,000. Not knowing how many ballots are remaining is not really the greatest thing. We need to know how many ballots there are so that there can be transparency and integrity and trust in the system. And that trust has been deteriorated because it should not take this long to count several hundred ballots or several thousand. True, today we had maybe 200 ballots to go, and the drip, drip, drip 10 ballot updates at a time in some of these counts per hour is just brutal, and it needs to be better. It needs to be on the same day. It needs to be on the same day, paper ballots, hand counting, and there needs to be a redesign if we're going to have so many mail-in ballots and the elections are going to be this close, where we can have results come in on the night of the election. Other jurisdictions across the world do it, and we need to do it too. It just erodes trust in the system, and that's not okay. The perception is as important as the security. People need to have faith in the election and the outcome. So again, if you want to hear more about BC, go to my video about BC that was, I think, my second most recent video before this one, the most recent one before this one, more accurately. And we go into some of the more reasons to that. But again, change election. The BC NDP are way down. The New Brunswick progressive conservatives were absolutely destroyed, and it just goes on. So now, a quick segue. Trudeau is not resigning. I know that there was a lot of talk about Trudeau resigning. Not going to happen. He's staying on like something that you want to get rid of, but you just can't. And anybody who thought that he was going to resign maybe hasn't been paying close enough attention, because over the last few years, it's become very apparent that he's a narcissist, an egomaniac, and he won't be going anywhere unless he has to. And there wasn't enough people in the party, the 24 or so rebel MPs, who actually questioned his leadership to force a change. He's not going to go anywhere unless he's voted out. Now to Saskatchewan, which is the main story of the night, as the polls are about to close in just about an hour from when I'm filming this video. It's about 9 o'clock here Eastern time, and 7 Saskatchewan polls close at 8, and then the counting will be pretty quick, I think. But wow, we're seeing a major trend change. Just about a week or two ago, it was almost a sure thing that the Saskatchewan party would win in Saskatchewan. A 338's model was showing a 99% chance for the Saskatchewan party and Scott Moe. Now tonight, I believe their update is showing 50-50 chance of a majority government for either party, 50-50 chance of winning the most seats for either party, and tied on the popular vote. So 5 recent polls have showed the NDP a few points ahead, 3, 4, kind of that range ahead, and those are Insitrix research. Now, Insitrix was showing this for a while now. I think this whole year they've showed the NDP ahead in every one of their polls this year, and they were the only ones, so they were an outlier in that way. But then we got other polls. Main Street Research, who showed the BC Conservatives ahead in BC, showed that the NDP were ahead in Saskatchewan. And then Liaison Strategies, and then Research Co., and finally Forum Research. No update, I believe, from Janet Brown, which was a very reliable and trustworthy pollster in the last election. They got it very accurately, so I don't believe they did a final update. I can't see it posted anywhere. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but a lot of polls coming out and showing that the NDP are ahead in Saskatchewan. And with the vote splitting that's going to happen with the Sask United Party and the Buffalo Party, it might be enough to give the NDP a government. So yeah. Now, again, 50% chance in the 338 model of a Saskatchewan NDP victory. Yeah, that's how things are going right now, and it's a very real chance that the Saskatchewan NDP will pull out an upset here. Again, change elections across the country. They're doing powerful, and their message has connected with a significant and enthusiastic portion of voters, specifically the healthcare message. But let's dive a little bit deeper into the healthcare, because let's look at BC for a second. In BC, there's almost 1 million people, 1 in 5 people, who don't have a family doctor. And this isn't a place that has been run by the NDP for a long time. Yeah. And like the rest of Canada, BC is experiencing ER closures on long weekends, on other times, and different wait times. We're seeing these healthcare strains even in NDP-run British Columbia. And we always hear that it's the provinces who are responsible for these things like healthcare, but there are bigger things at play here, and we're going to dive into that. But a comparative quickly. So 1 in 5 people in British Columbia approximately who don't have a family doctor. Well, let's look at Saskatchewan. It's approximately 200,000 people in Saskatchewan without a family doctor, or 1 in 6 people. And again, Saskatchewan, like all of Canada, including British Columbia, NDP British Columbia, is closing ERs on weekends and different times. So they're both suffering closures of emergency rooms across the province at different points. We're seeing these healthcare systems strained across our country. When it comes to wait times, according to the Fraser Institute, BC had a median wait time of 27.7 weeks from general practitioner's referral to treatment in 2023. So that's 27.7 weeks in BC wait time. And then Saskatchewan, that median wait time was 31 weeks. And then the median wait time across Canada was 27.7 weeks. So we're not seeing radical differences in that way between British Columbia and Saskatchewan. But there are a lot deeper statistics to this. You can go quite deep. There's surgical wait times, there's procedural wait times, there's hospital ER room wait times. But I'm just trying to give you a glimpse to show that things are pretty comparable in Saskatchewan Party-run Saskatchewan and NDP-run British Columbia under Dave Eby. And here's a little bit of a thinker for you. Wait times across Canada are up 198%. This is for GP referral to treatment, from 9.3 weeks to 27.7 weeks from 1993 to 2023. That's crazy. Why? Well, the fact is, it's a supply and demand equation. Our population is increasing at a rate. Our infrastructure isn't growing to match it. Specifically, immigration. We're having a lot of immigration in Saskatchewan, in British Columbia, in Ontario, in all of Canada, and this is leading to strain on the healthcare system. To put it really simply, there are more people who are needing access to care, and there is less care available from them. And we can see that there is robust medical and NDP policies in BC, and they're not making significant differences, where we're still having that strain from the basic supply and demand problem that we're having with immigration. And this goes on to things like jobs. It makes it so that employers can pay people less because they have hundreds of people competing for every role. So they don't need to pay more to maintain the people who are working for them, to keep them working for them. They know that no matter what, if they have turnover, there's going to be 100 people tomorrow who want that job. And this goes for housing too. There's more people looking for housing, so rents are higher and the price of buying a home is higher. It's very simple. It's a supply and demand equation. And we even see the Liberals acknowledge that problem recently, saying that there's going to be a reduction in permanent residents. I talked about that briefly, but it's too little too late probably. And these are the main drivers of issues when it comes to healthcare in Canada and other key issues like jobs and housing. The Saskatchewan economy, meanwhile, has grown modestly in the last couple of years. I believe they had a 1.6% GDP growth in 2023. Not huge, but comparable to the rest of Canada, and they're doing pretty well. So again, we're having change elections. People are tired of the incumbents. They are stagnating. They have maybe a limited access to healthcare. They're not getting the healthcare they think they should have. They're not getting the housing they think they should have, the jobs they think they should have, the education they think they should have. And they're voting the people in power out. They're blaming them. And they should, in a way, because it's the incumbent's responsibility to make policy that works for everybody. There's always a room to improve, but when things are really bad, the worse they get, the more people vote against those in power. And we're seeing that trend in British Columbia. We're seeing that trend in New Brunswick, and we're going to see it in Saskatchewan tonight. We're going to see a reduction in seats for the Saskatchewan Party, 100%. Whether they're going to squeak by a majority or the NDP are going to have an upset, I don't know. It's a 50-50 chance according to the 338 model. All the recent polls, 5 recent polls from some reputable polling firms, are showing that the NDP have a real chance of pulling ahead. We'll see where it goes. I mean, it could be. Is the vote splitting going to be enough to give the NDP a majority? It just might. Why? What's the trend responsible for this? It's the trend of voting against the incumbent. It's the anti-incumbency sentiment across Canada. This does not bode well for Justin Trudeau. It does not bode well for anyone, and it certainly doesn't bode well for Scott Moe. All right, thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, I'm Right Blend.